Written by Barbara Slavin from the Atlantic Council, this chapter delves into the complex and often contentious history between the United States and Iran. The United States and Iran stand at a crossroads, their relationship strained by decades of mistrust and animosity. This tension is not a recent development but rather the result of a long and complicated history. The shadow of the 1979 Islamic Revolution, which saw the overthrow of the US-backed Shah and the subsequent hostage crisis, continues to loom large. The revolution marked a significant turning point, leading to the severing of diplomatic ties and setting the stage for decades of hostility. This historical baggage has shaped perceptions on both sides, fostering suspicion and hindering constructive engagement. The events of 1979 are not just historical footnotes, they are deeply ingrained in the national psyches of both countries. Adding fuel to the fire are fundamental differences in ideology and worldviews. The United States and Iran operate on vastly different political and social paradigms, which often puts them at odds. The US, with its emphasis on individual liberties and democratic values, often views Iran's theocratic system and its regional ambitions with suspicion. This ideological clash is not just about governance but extends to issues of human rights, freedom of expression, and the role of religion in public life. Iran, for its part, sees the US as a hegemonic power seeking to undermine its sovereignty and regional influence. This perception is fueled by a history of US interventions in the Middle East, which Iran views as attempts to control the region's political landscape. This mutual distrust has manifested in a series of confrontations over the years, ranging from the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s, where the US backed Saddam Hussein's regime, to the current standoff over Iran's nuclear program. Each of these confrontations has added layers of complexity and animosity to the relationship. The absence of diplomatic relations between the two countries further complicates matters, limiting channels for communication and increasing the risk of miscalculations. Without formal diplomatic ties, misunderstandings can easily escalate into crises. The lack of trust between Washington and Tehran makes it exceedingly difficult to find common ground. Political analysts often point out that both sides are trapped in a cycle of suspicion and retaliation, making diplomatic breakthroughs rare and fragile. Each side views the other's actions through the prism of suspicion, interpreting even conciliatory gestures as signs of weakness or deception. This mutual wariness creates a precarious environment where any move can be seen as a potential threat. This toxic atmosphere of mistrust serves as a significant impediment to resolving the current crisis. The barriers to diplomacy are not just political but also psychological, rooted in decades of enmity and misunderstanding. Overcoming these barriers will require not just political will but also a fundamental shift in how both nations perceive each other. The 2015 Iran nuclear deal, formerly known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA, was intended to be a watershed moment in US-Iran relations. It was a historic agreement that brought together world powers and Iran to address one of the most contentious issues in international diplomacy. The deal offered a path to easing sanctions on Iran in exchange for verifiable limits on its nuclear program. This meant that Iran would reduce its stockpile of enriched uranium, limit its number of centrifuges, and allow comprehensive inspections by the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA. For a brief period, it seemed as though dialogue and diplomacy might pave the way for a less confrontational future. The agreement was hailed as a triumph of diplomacy over conflict, and there was hope that it could lead to a broader rapprochement between Iran and the West. However, the Trump administration's 2018 decision to withdraw from the JCPOA and reimpose sanctions on Iran dealt a severe blow to the agreement. The withdrawal was justified by claims that the deal was flawed and that it did not address Iran's ballistic missile program or its regional activities. The US withdrawal, coupled with the reinstatement of sanctions, effectively choked off Iran's economic lifeline and fueled resentment within the country. The sanctions targeted key sectors of the Iranian economy, including oil exports, banking, and shipping, leading to widespread economic hardship. In response, Iran gradually stepped back from its commitments under the JCPOA, enriching uranium to higher levels and limiting international inspections of its nuclear facilities. This escalation raised concerns about the potential for Iran to develop nuclear weapons capabilities. While Iran maintains that its nuclear program is for peaceful purposes, its actions have raised alarm bells in Washington and among its allies. The international community is deeply divided on how to address the situation, with some advocating for renewed diplomacy, and others calling for increased pressure on Iran. The collapse of the JCPOA has created a dangerous vacuum, leaving the future of Iran's nuclear program uncertain and raising the specter of a regional arms race. The potential for conflict in the Middle East has increased, with neighboring countries considering their own nuclear options in response to Iran's actions. It has also deepened the chasm of mistrust between Washington and Tehran, making it even more challenging to find a diplomatic solution to the current impasse. The path forward remains unclear, with both sides entrenched in their positions, and the stakes higher than ever. The shadow of the nuclear deal continues to loom large over the region, shaping the geopolitical landscape and influencing the course of international relations. In recent months, tensions between the US and Iran have escalated further, fueled by a series of military maneuvers and incidents. The geopolitical landscape has become increasingly fraught, with both nations engaging in a high-stakes game of brinkmanship. Both sides have engaged in shows of force, raising concerns about a potential miscalculation that could spark a wider conflict. The display of military might is not just for deterrence but also serves as a message to the international community about their respective capabilities and resolve. Iran, for its part, has conducted military exercises showcasing its missile capabilities, emphasizing its ability to strike US bases and allies in the region. These exercises are designed to demonstrate Iran's readiness to defend its interests and to project power within its sphere of influence. These exercises are widely seen as a response to the US military buildup in the Persian Gulf, which Tehran views as a provocative act. The presence of US aircraft carriers and other naval assets in the region is perceived by Iran as a direct threat to its sovereignty and security. Adding to the tension are reports of attacks on commercial shipping in the Strait of Hormuz, a vital waterway for global oil supplies. The strategic importance of this narrow passage cannot be overstated, as it is a critical choke point for the world's energy supply. While responsibility for these incidents remains unclear, they have heightened anxieties and underscored the vulnerability of the region to disruptions. The ambiguity surrounding these attacks has led to a climate of suspicion and fear, with each side accusing the other of sabotage. The frequency and intensity of these military maneuvers and incidents have created a highly volatile environment. The constant state of alert and readiness for conflict has put immense pressure on military personnel and resources on both sides. The risk of miscalculation is significant, as each side interprets the other's actions through the lens of suspicion and mistrust. This atmosphere of mutual distrust makes it difficult to establish effective communication channels, increasing the likelihood of unintended escalation. This dangerous dynamic underscores the urgent need for clear communication and de-escalatory measures to prevent a slide towards war. Diplomatic efforts must be intensified to bridge the gap between the two nations and to find a peaceful resolution to the ongoing tensions. The international community has a crucial role to play in facilitating dialogue and promoting stability in the region.